Hi everyone, this is Jim with JP Reacts, where you come to hear a former candidate talk about what politicians are saying every day and kind of get the meaning behind what they are saying and what they aren't saying. Today, we're going to be listening to a video from from President-elect Biden about national security. It's going to cover a number of topics, so hopefully we can get something out of it and go from there. If you're into that, listen to this next, and we'll go from there. Okay, so let's jump right into the video.
Good afternoon, everyone. Before I begin, I want to say a few brief words about the explosion that took place Friday in Nashville, Tennessee. Federal, state, and local law enforcement working around the clock to gain more information on motive and intent. This bombing was a reminder of the destructive power that an individual or a small group can muster and the need for continuing vigilance across the board. I want to thank the police department in Nashville, particularly those 5 police officers who worked so quickly to evacuate the area before the explosion occurred, risking their own lives. And for all the firefighters and first responders who jumped into action early on that last Christmas morning. Their bravery and cool-headedness likely saved lives and prevented a worse outcome, and we are eternally grateful to that law enforcement agency. And I know the hearts of all Americans are the people of Nashville as they rebuild and recover from this traumatic event. Now, Vice President Harris and I, along with our nominees to lead the national security institutions.
So what happened in Nashville this past couple days on Christmas was horrific and should probably never have happened. I'm not going to go into a lot of details. You can read up on it, but there's a lot of reports coming out that agencies and or other police officials knew about this plan for over a year. I don't know if that's 100% confirmed, but we need to make sure that we rely on the agencies involved and the experts involved to really work through this. The key here is to make sure it never happens again and not to let news agencies and politicians gin this up for extra fear and extra xenophobia or any other type of fear against other people. Let the agencies do their work, find out what happened, find out what we can do to prevent it in the future. And that's the key we want to take away from acts of terror like this, not get all worked up because people are trying to use this to further their agenda. So really focus on what's key here. A lot of people were saved, and we are going to be able to find why this happened and what we can do to prevent it in the future.
I've just been briefed by some of the professionals who have been conducting agency reviews as a part of our transition. This is a long-standing part of the orderly transition of power in American democracy. We welcomed teams from the incoming Trump-Pence administration 4 years ago, gave them access to all that we had. And over the past few weeks, teams of genuine policy and management experts, many of them previous government experience, who have gone into agencies across the government to conduct interviews with personnel, to gather information, and to assess the state of the federal government that we will shortly inherit. These teams worked under incredibly difficult circumstances, taking COVID-19 precautions and waiting weeks for the ascertainment, meaning that so they could go in and be cleared to go in. But they have done an outstanding job. For some agencies, our teams received exemplary cooperation from the career staff in those agencies. From others, most notably the Department of Defense, we encountered obstruction from the political leadership of that department. And the truth is, many of the agencies...
That's fairly ridiculous that what's going on right now. The defense and national security teams at the White House and in this administration really need to pick up the ball and get the transition information transferred. What we don't want is there to be a mishandling of information, something gets missed, and during the transition, our enemies take advantage of the situation because some piece of information wasn't passed along. This is a tradition that has happened many, many times. This time doesn't have to be any different. This information needs to be passed to President-elect Biden's nominees, and the career people in those agencies need to be allowed to be able to do this. This isn't something to be played around with. These things that could be missed could really put our country in danger, and we want to make sure that that's moving forward. So hopefully they get this figured out and move forward. It's not usually the people that work there. The people that work there that aren't political appointees are usually career civil servants, and it's not them that are usually doing it. They're usually the experts. So hopefully we can, the political appointees in these agencies can get the ball rolling and fix this issue.
Agencies that are critical to our security have incurred enormous damage. Many of them have been hollowed out in personnel, capacity, and in morale, in the policy processes that have atrophied or have been sidelined, in the despair of our alliances and the disrepair of those alliances, in our absence from key institutions that matter to the welfare of the American people, in the general.
The facts that a lot of our expertise in these areas, in all these areas, have been hollowed out. What he means by that, a lot of those career civil servants that I mentioned before have left. And with them goes a lot of institutional knowledge, a lot of expertise. And we need that expertise in these governments because we need to know what's going on. And the people that work there for years between administrations are the ones that know. So hopefully we can rebuild that expertise either by hiring back some of those people or by building new people up as quickly as possible. It's kind of scary that we've lost so much, but it's important that we get it back on track to get that expertise and that institutional knowledge back into the government so they can help us defend our country and make it safer.
Disengagement from the world. And all of it makes it harder for our government to protect the American people, to defend our vital interests in a world where threats are constantly evolving and our adversaries are constantly adapting. Rebuilding the full set of our instruments of foreign policy and national security is a key challenge that the Vice President-elect Harris and I will face upon taking office, starting with our diplomacy. Today, we heard from the leaders of the state and USAID agency review teams about the critical early investment we're going to need to make in our diplomacy, in our development efforts, and in rebuilding our alliances, to close the ranks with our partners and bring to bear the full benefits of our shared strength for the American people. When we consider
that is something that's been widely known in the Trump administration, that our alliances have frayed, specifically NATO, where he's spoken out against it a lot. Not saying that NATO doesn't have any issues, it does. But we need those to counterbalance some foreign actors that aren't exactly doing things in our interests. And a lot of these alliances, they feel like they've been neglected or that we've been obstacles. We've actually been an obstacle to solving some of these problems. So the fact that President-elect Biden wants to reinvest in that and rebuild that capability out is really going to help us not only solve problems across the world, but also keep the more diplomacy assets we have, the less time we actually have to deploy our military and really get our military in danger and lose those soldiers' lives unnecessarily. A lot of these things could probably be solved by us working with our allies and coming up with solutions that would work in the favor of our country and everybody else around the world. So I'm glad he's talking about making sure he revamps that and gets that back up to speed.
Consider the most daunting threats of our time, we know that meeting them requires American engagement and American leadership, but also that none of them can be solved by America acting alone. Take climate change, for example. The United States accounts for less than 15% of the global carbon emissions. But without clear, coordinated, and committed approach from the other 85% of the carbon emitters, the world will continue to warm. Storms will continue to worsen. Climate change will continue to threaten the lives and livelihoods, and public health and economics of our existence and literally, the very existence of our planet.
Well, the planet's not going anywhere. The climate change is what it's going to affect is our ability for our society to function in the way it does currently, being damaged in that way. But he did mention a percentage that were 15% of the emissions, the greenhouse gas emissions. Keep in mind that the United States population is a little bit over 4% of the world population. So we are emitting way, way above what our population is. And that's why we need to be a leader in this, because we are a big culprit in this area. Yeah, the rest of the world has 85% of the emissions, but they also have 95.5% of the population. So the rest of the world is emitting at a lower rate than their population. We're emitting at a higher rate. So we need to be leaders in that area and fix it.
We've learned so painfully this year the cost of being unprepared for a pandemic that leaps borders and circles the globe. If we aren't investing with our partners around the world to strengthen the health systems everywhere, we're undermining our ability to permanently defeat COVID-19, and we're leaving ourselves vulnerable to the next deadly epidemic. And as we compete with China to hold China's government accountable for its trade abuses, technology, human rights, and other fronts, our position will be much stronger when we build coalitions of like-minded partners and allies that make common cause with us in defense of our shared interest and our shared values. We make up almost 25% of the entire economy of the world. But together with our democratic partners, we more than double our economic leverage. On any issue that matters.
Just to be clear, when he says democratic partners, he means other countries that are democratic, not the Democrats in the United States.
The U.S. and China relationship, from pursuing a foreign policy for the middle class, including a trade and economic agenda that produces and protects American workers, our intellectual prosperity and the environment, to ensuring security and prosperity in the Indo-Pacific region, to championing human rights. We're stronger and more effective when we're flanked by nations that share our vision and the future of our world. That's how we multiply the impact of our efforts and make those efforts more sustainable. That's the power of smart, effective American leadership. But right now, there's an enormous vacuum. We're going to have to regain the trust and confidence of a world that has begun to find ways to work around us or work without us. We also heard
and that's key. Our allies need us to lead, but in absence of our leadership, they can find ways around us, and that can isolate us and prevent us from negotiating treaties and or relationships or agreements that are in our favor. So by isolating ourselves from the world, we are preventing us from getting the benefits of the world. And it really prevents us from getting good agreements for all kinds of things, not just from trade, but also from energy and from military, or all kinds of things that go into those types of relationships. So having bad relationships with our allies is actually hurting us. Retreating from the world and putting America first is hurting us. It is not helping us. So it's key that we rebuild those relationships, like the president-elect says.
From key leaders of our intelligence and defense review teams, including Stephanie O'Sullivan, former Principal Deputy Director of the National Intelligence, and retired Army Lieutenant General Karen Gibson. We talked about the different strategic challenges we're going to face from both Russia and China, and the reforms we must make to put ourselves in the strongest possible position to meet those challenges. That includes modernizing our defense priorities to better deter aggression in the future, rather than continuing to overinvest in legacy systems designed to address threats of the past. We have to be able to innovate.
This is also a key point here. When you talk about legacy systems or making sure we're on the cutting edge, a lot of times generals or policymakers are fighting the last war instead of the next one. And what that means is they're relying on the tactics and the equipment and all that was used to win last time, not what's going to be happening in the future. So what's happening now and in the future is going to be more heavily cyber related and even bioterror and chemical terror related. So we need to invest in those technologies. Our enemies like Russia and China are way ahead of us on these areas because it's cheap to do, whereas our systems right now are expensive because it's based on our military more than our cyber units. So we really need to make sure we're investing better in our cyber technology to really enhance our capabilities in those areas to meet the challenges of today.
To reimagine our defenses against growing threats in new realms like cyberspace.
Yeah,
We're still learning about the extent of the SolarWinds hack and the vulnerabilities that have been exposed. As I said last week, this attack constitutes a grave risk to our national security. We need to close the gap between where our capabilities are now and where they need to be to better deter.
So we actually just had a cyber attack on our country a few days ago, and all the results haven't come out yet, what happened, what went down, but it does emphasize the fact that we don't have the same capabilities as some other countries do. We need to build those out, not only to be able to be in offensive, but defensive capabilities to protect our country and our systems and our infrastructure so that attacks like that can't happen. Or if they do happen, the results are minimal and we know about it instantly. And we can repel it or counterattack it to make sure it stops. So that's why cyber is so important.
Detect, disrupt, and respond to those sorts of intrusions in the future. This is an area where Republicans and Democrats are in agreement, and we should be able to work on a bipartisan basis to better secure the American people against malign cyber actors. And right now, as our nation is in a period of transition, we need to make sure that nothing is lost in the handoff between administrations. My team needs a clear picture of our force posture around the world and our operations to deter our enemies. We need full visibility into the budget planning underway at the Defense Department and other agencies in order to avoid any window of confusion or catch-up that our adversaries may try to exploit. But as I said,
and this is key. This is kind of what I was saying before. The administrations, when they hand off, need to make sure all the information is passed. And it takes time to do that. It doesn't happen in one meeting. So the fact that some of this has been delayed is really opening our country up for trouble in the future. So it's going to be really imperative that the Trump administration catches up on this and gets the information to the incoming Biden administration. They haven't really indicated that they are going to fix this, but hopefully they come to the realization that there's enough people in the room that will be able to move the ball forward to get the information that the Biden administration needs to keep the country safe. Because if not, it opens the country up to being attacked and not being completely secure just because the last administration didn't give all the information that they needed to give.
From the beginning, we have encountered roadblocks from the political leadership at the Department of Defense and the Office of Management and Budget. Right now, we just aren't getting all the information that we need for the outgoing administration in key national security areas. It's nothing short, in my view, of irresponsibility. Finally, we spoke about the day one challenge that we're going to need to address immediately, drawing on the skill sets of the Department of Homeland Security and the Federal Emergency Management Agency. We were briefed on the steps needed to clean up the humanitarian disaster that the Trump administration has systematically created on our southern border. We will institute humane and orderly responses. That means rebuilding the capacity we need to safely and quickly process asylum seekers without creating near-term crisis in the midst of this deadly pandemic. These are hard issues, and the current administration has made them much harder by working to erode our capacity. It's going to take time to rebuild that capacity. We're going to work purposely, diligently, and responsibly to roll back Trump's restrictions, starting on day one. But it is not as simple as throwing a switch to turn everything back on, especially amid a pandemic. We'll have to have a process.
There's been tons of news stories on what's going down on our southern border from the Trump administration's asylum seekers and immigration. I'm not going to get into too much detail on that. Facts are that I'm glad that he's addressing this here because it is a national security issue. And we do need to get back to a normalized process for asylum. It's causing more trouble than what the Trump administration says it's solving. Children being separated from their parents is unacceptable in any situation. And what we got to remember here is the reason a lot of these people are coming here seeking asylum is from actions that the United States took in their home countries and caused these people to be driven from their homes. So just to say they should stay home and fix it themselves isn't realistic when it was us who created the problem in the first place. So we need to be the ones to take them in, to give them asylum and protection, and then work with those governments to fix the issues that we created ourselves.
To ensure everyone's health and safety, including the safety of asylum seekers, hoping for a new start in the United States, free of violence and persecution. Of course, an essential part of this will be managing the safe, equitable, and efficient distribution of vaccinations to as many Americans as possible, as quickly as possible. FEMA has an enormous part to play in this. And we heard from the former FEMA director, Craig Fugate, today. We want to make sure that our administration is poised to make full use of FEMA's domestic reach and capacity in managing our COVID response. And finally, from every briefer, I was heartened. I was literally heartened to hear about the incredible strength we'll be inheriting in the career professionals and working people across these agencies. They never stop doing their jobs and continue to serve our country day in and day out to keep their fellow Americans safe, just as they've always done. These agencies are filled with patriots who have earned our respect and who should never be treated as political footballs. I'm looking forward to the honor of working with them again, to asking for their advice and inputs to help shape the best possible policies for all Americans. I want to thank the incredible folks who've served on these agency review teams as part of this transition. They've dedicated their time and energy, their vital experience and expertise to help ensure Vice President Harris and I are ready to hit the ground running. And we look forward to the start of a new year, fresh with hope and possibilities for better days to come. But clear-eyed about the challenges that will not disappear overnight. I want to reiterate my message to the American people. We've overcome incredible challenges as a nation, and we've done it before, and we will do it again. We'll do it by coming together, by uniting after years of pain and loss, a year particularly needed to heal, to rebuild, to reclaim America's place in the world. This is the work that lies ahead of us, and I know we're up to the task. We will champion liberty and democracy once more. We will reclaim our credibility to lead the free world. And we will, once again, lead not just by the example of our power, but by the power of our example. God bless you all, and may God protect our troops. Thank you.
So that was President-elect Biden talking about national security. Covered a lot of topics. We covered not only rebuilding our alliances and building up our diplomacy capabilities, but also making sure that we have stuff in place for asylum seekers and also making sure that we have a good amount of reinvestment in cybersecurity, which is going to be key for future security of our nation. So hopefully you learned something from this video. I was able to add a little bit of information that maybe added some context. If you did, please like the video below. If you felt like I didn't add anything of value, feel free to dislike the video. But either way, please comment below and tell me which of these, how would you rank these priorities as most important to least important? So the priorities, again, laid out were rebuilding our alliances and our diplomacy status, reinvesting and building up our cybersecurity is the second one. And then the third one is fixing our asylum system and the immigration system at the southern border. So how would you rank those? Put the comments below how you would rank those. Either way, I hope you guys are having a great holiday season. And until I see you around the internet again, have a great day. Bye.